Welcome to the Pro Aging Podcast. I'm Steve Gurney, founder of the Positive Aging Community. We're thrilled to have you join us for interactive discussions with pioneers and thought leaders on a wide variety of topics related to aging and longevity. These insightful discussions and the Positive Aging Sourcebook are brought to you thanks to the support from our Positive Aging Community champions. Visit proaging.com to connect with them and discover hundreds of valuable other resources. We're excited to have you with us today, so let's jump into an engaging Positive Aging live and interactive discussion. Super excited to have Carol Chang with us today, who wrote a book, Age in Place and Find a New Space. And if you're familiar with our platform, you better believe when I saw the title of that book, I was like, I got to track down this author and see if she's willing to come on and join us for one of these discussions. And so, Carol, I am psyched that you're here. We're going to have a great discussion today. Before we dive into your book and learn more about some of the solutions that you present, let's get to know you a little bit better. Tell us a little bit about your background and what led you writing this book.
Absolutely. Yeah. So happy to be here. Welcome. I'm glad everybody is hanging out and talking about this because we do not talk about this enough. My background is occupational therapy. I have been a clinician about 27 years, most of that time being in home care. So I have a deep knowledge of all the messiness that comes with caregivers, going hospital to home, all of those kinds of things. I got to a point where, I've recognized that with the global aging crisis, these problems that I keep seeing over and over again, they are going to continue. So instead of me trying to do these visits one by one, or even educational things, the best way to provide this information much more freely and much more widely is to put all of that information into a book. And, my big goal being that I want, libraries to be stocking this because, listen, you don't know what a person's financial situation is, and a $20 book may be too much. And I want the information. I believe that the access to that information should be for everybody. There should be equality for that, and not only the people who happen to be in some specific person's care, or somebody who has the resources financially to afford, one-to-one guidance.
I love it. And you're hitting on another topic that we talk about regularly on this platform, and that's affordability. Is that oftentimes when people enter this wacky senior living ecosystem, the first thing that they're struck by is like, holy cow, this stuff is expensive. So I'm really glad that, and I agree. I mean, having a book and DIY, bringing your community together to support safe and accessible housing and aging in place is really key.
And let me just emphasize that importance of the finance thing. I am literally, chapter 2 of my book is about the money part, because I think that right now, maybe it's too much of a taboo to think about, well, let's talk to mom and dad about the finances. Do they have money? Did they save for it? Did they plan for these things? You can't plan ahead if you don't talk about the money. And we have to talk about it and get away from the fact that it feels impolite or these misconceptions, because I think it's hurting people long term. So I absolutely support this. Let's talk about the money at all times and as often as possible.
And talking about money in most families is taboo. Is that
it is.
In most families, we were raised never to ask mom and dad how much they made, how much they've got. But now that we're adults and you're, a 60-year-old child, it's sort of like you can and should talk to your mom about this. I'm going to share your table of contents so we can take a glimpse at what's in the book, and we'll talk about that. But I also want to remind our community members that, folks, if you got questions, type them in Q&A or chat. But hopefully when we start having a conversation here, it may trigger some of the needs that you all are going through and some of the concerns that you've got. But before we do that, I want to dial in on the fact that you're an occupational therapist. Is that oftentimes when we think about occupational therapists, we think about going into a clinic and somebody's going to help us, get up and down stairs or getting in and out of this automobile that's parked in a rehab center or what have you. But at the end of the day, one of the main values of occupational therapists that I don't think people are taking advantage of is actually looking at their own home environment, not in some kind of clinic. Talk a little bit about your profession and how it's supporting people in design a little bit more these days.
Absolutely. Thank you for bringing that up because I think that it's a huge confusion around what OTs do and what PTs do and rehab. And we are sometimes seen to be only in the hospital environment. And so if I can just back up a little bit and talk about like what are the foundational ideas of occupational therapy, it's the holistic person. It's looking at what is important to you, Steve, what is your environment, and what are the tasks that are important to you, not important to me, what are important to you, and how do I make sure that all three of those can live in the same spot. So ultimately, occupational therapies, I tell people that I'm a professional problem solver. It's kind of hard to encompass all the different areas that we do, but essentially, I work for the client and they tell me what they're wanting to do. I provide ideas, we brainstorm together, and we try to come up with things that really represent what that person is about. And so then those are ideas that will truly stick. And in the home environment, I mean, where do you spend the most time? That is absolutely the spot where you need to be looking at how do I function in that space, not how I function in the hospital. It's more important at home. So we are absolutely in whatever environment that that person is in. And in my book, I talk about the person, environment, occupation model, which is what all OTs learn in school.
I love it. I love it. And with that, let's take a look at what's in the book. So, folks, on the screen, I have the table of contents. I know some of you are listening in, so don't worry. We'll read through these. But you had mentioned, chapter 2 is the true cost of aging in place. But let's kind of dive into some of these chapters. Chapter 1, your future starts now. I'm assuming that relates to basically we need to start thinking and planning for this as well as we can right now.
Well, I'll tell you, chapter one is the mindset change that most people go like, wait, what now? You think that we should be planning for aging in place when you buy your first house? And I talk about that as something important because when you buy your first house, it's ugly. It has an avocado bathroom. It's just random pink walls. I mean, you're going to put aside a remodeling budget already, no matter what. So it's a missed opportunity if you don't take at least a second or two to consider whether or not there would be some layout changes or ways to make this space more accessible going forward. And even if that's something that you can't afford to do right now because it is your first house, it's at least you're on the track of thinking about it. And maybe that's a 10 years down the road kind of change, right? But even something as simple as putting in blocking behind the walls so that if your daredevil husband, breaks his leg like going like skateboarding or something silly, that you could put in those grab bars because accessible spaces, universally designed spaces, these are just making your spaces easier to live for everyone. Not just this is not something for older adults. This is welcoming to all people who might visit your house in all situations where they might find themselves where they need a little bit of extra help. So I talk about the most important idea being like take advantage of these changes as you go through your homes early on, but two, a chance to build early healthy habits. Because I'll tell you from my experience, it is extremely hard to get somebody who is 70, who has never exercised in their life, spent 20 years as a smoker, to try to suddenly adopt habits of less salt, exercise, the feeling of soreness. I mean, listen, this is hard stuff. And you
Hmm.
need decades to kind of grow those kinds of muscles, have an opportunity to fall off the wagon, go back to the chips and root beer and stuff for 6 months or something and try again. So you get more opportunities to try the earlier you start. And it's such a weight off compared to when you're in your 70s, and the consequences are real. Like they are serious. If you don't do X, these are something that can happen. And so it can feel so daunting at that moment that somebody might just say, I give up. I give up. I accept those consequences. So my phrase is usually that the choices that you make today, those are the consequences you're going to reap tomorrow. So if you know that, let's try to choose better choices today so that I don't have so much pain later. It's a gift to the future me. That's what it really
Hmm.
is about.
Yeah, and it's tough. I mean, it really is. So let's sort of we talked a little bit about, let's talk about chapter 2 and 3, the true cost of aging in place, and then the practical challenges. And sometimes when we host discussions like this, um, folks are thinking, oh, geez, I can't afford a stair glide or an elevator or things like that. But when we get right down to it, lighting, those rugs that you might have been able to avoid as a tripping hazard for the last 40 years, picking those up. So let's talk a little bit about these two things, the cost and then the practical challenges of aging in place.
Yeah, so this is really where OTs shine because what the challenges are the activities of daily living, which is what we do, what we assess every single time. So what that means is we call this the job of living. So can you get dressed? Can you get out of bed? Can you take a shower by yourself? Can you brush your teeth and comb your hair? And all these things that we learned, early on, and we've completely taken it for granted. And but recognizing it into like one space, check off the box. Like, what am I going to do if I can't get in the shower anymore? What's your plan? What am I going to do if I can't get myself meals anymore? What's your plan? So having a plan for all of these things is important, but you can only know that if you know what you're looking at. And it kind of brings me back to that money aspect of it. I tell the example I have in my book is that you would never think about planning for college when your kid is 17. Because how in the world would you know how much to save for? It's impossible.
Hmm.
And so we should have the same kind of respect for us and saying, look, I don't know what the future holds, but I do need to figure out how much I need to save, which is why you need to start back there in your 20s. So so when we're thinking about like these practical areas that you need to work on, you need to see, okay, what is it that I'm going to do, and what is the cost, and what is the cost for my backup plan? What if I can't stay at home anymore? Because when we come back to the exercise and nutrition part of it, that's you being healthy. What happens with healthier people? They have less medical costs. Stair glides are not a universal thing. This isn't, you go from crawling to walking to running. This is not that kind of progression. Okay. Lots and lots of people live their entire lives and pass away without the need of a stair glide. And I actually have a lot of 80, 90-year-olds who they swear that their 3-story house is why been able to stay in their home because they have something to do. So these quote unquote obstacles are not obstacles. And the connection to cost is that I say that if you can develop that exercise habit in your 20s and 30s, you can avoid needing to have a stair glider, which is going to be a lot more money. And exercise is cheap, home modifications is expensive. And those are your
Hmm.
choices, right? One's not better than the other. Some people just don't have the capacity to push themselves to do that. That's fine. So those are the people who need to go to their financial advisor and say, look, I know myself. I am not built like that. And that's okay. Nobody's judging. But that does mean that I need to prepare a little bit more with a little bit more cushion financially, knowing that the cost of medical care can be very expensive. And sometimes the motivation, money is a motivator. And sometimes people recognizing that 24/7 care cost can be 240K a year, right? They're thinking, oh my gosh, every year that I stay healthy, I basically just put 240K in my pocket. Okay,
Hmm.
you're not making anything close like that from the stock market, but you can make it investing in yourself.
And taking a small percentage of that and investing it in your living space. And we're going to dive into, I love chapter 4, which is what is universal design. But before we do, Bonnie, because we gave her a
Uh,
peek at all the chapters, she asks, what let's see, it's chapter 8 is lifestyle medicine. She asks, what do you mean by lifestyle medicine? And will you be discussing how to get your doctor on board? So, can you give us a little overview of what lifestyle medicine is? I think it's some of what you've just been talking about.
Yes, so it is the healthy habits that we do, but what's going on right now in medicine, and it's a little slower in the US. I'm Canadian by background, and so I spend a lot of time kind of seeing like what my friends are doing up there. This idea of non-pharmacological interventions that can have a solid impact in your ability to function. Those are called lifestyle medicine. And you might have heard of also social prescription, which is the idea of saying, look, you need to get out of the house, that your doctor coming to you and saying, you are socially isolated or you're not getting enough exercise or movement or whatever you need. I am writing you a prescription to be out of the house 3 days a week, going to this exercise class or that senior group or taking care of this volunteer activity that you really love. So it's providing guidance towards some of these softer skills, I think, that really do make a difference, but people discount them a little bit as, of course, healthy eating, taking my meds on time, drinking enough water, going to sleep on time. I mean, these are boring and these take discipline, but they do work. And that's why it's really important in my book to talk about the importance of looking at some of those things because they add up.
Great. I love it. Thanks, Bonnie, for the great question and moving us through some of the chapters. Let me dive back in, just give people a peek of some of the things we can talk about today. But chapter 4, something that I am super passionate about is universal design. And I'm really curious to hear your thoughts on universal design and the value of it.
So for me, the value of universal design is truly community based. It's showing that when you remodel, you're remodeling to have access for everyone. So ADA is the idea that anybody from like 5 foot nothing to 6'4" could access and use the spaces in the way that they are built physically, but also through preference. And universal design is kind of taking that idea and saying, okay, well, let's make wider doors, lever handles, things that are joint friendly, things that can make everybody who is in this house make their life easier. And one of the things that I talk a lot about in this universal design part is that even if you sell that house when you're 25, you're like, listen, this house is too small, but I decided to go ahead and put in wider doors, blocking, whatever. You're putting a house back on the market for somebody else who may not have the time or have had the forethought to be able to do those things before. So it's a gift to your community. It's a gift to really our housing stock, which at the moment is sitting at only 5% is even mobility friendly. Fully wheelchair accessible is under 1%. So when you look at statistics like that, you know that 95% of homes need to be adjusted or changed in order for older adults to be able to live there safely. So I tell people that even if it's an investment into changing your home to basic universal design, like you don't even have to try to preference this and say, okay, I got to make it exactly what I need, me and my family and whatever. Just, every renovation, take a small minute to look and see what are the universal design options that I could put in there. And to your point before, a lot of them are inexpensive. My father-in-law is a builder, and I know he's told me this, but I was trying to look for actual data on it. And I was seeing that, the average cost of adding universal design is only about 1% on a new build, on a custom build. But builders are under a lot of strain. I mean, these guys take on risk of saying, I'm going to build a house for you at X amount of money, having no idea what the lumber cost is going to be, what their labor shortage is going to be. And, I know from the horse's mouth. I mean, my father-in-law has said sometimes you get there and you work 3 years and you make nothing on this house. So it's hard for builders from the get-go to say, I'm going to add 1% cost to my house to make this socially friendly. but because I don't know if I'm going to get it back. But it drives me completely bonkers because I live in Florida of all places, and I still do custom build consults for people where or track building, I'm sorry, where it's a little bit affordable, that 500 to $1 million zone, where they have six or seven plans made by an architect, and you can only tweak them just a little bit. They're all still sitting at 27-inch doors, and I just said,
Yeah.
listen, you guys, and steps. And I'm like,
Steps.
I
Yeah.
get it.
Traditional builders are in love with steps. That's
I
for
I'm
sure, man. Yeah.
I get it
Um,
if you are in northeast of the US where your house is 100 years old and you don't have a choice. But we're talking about new builds. So it's not socially responsible, in my opinion, to be putting out more housing like that, knowing what we know and knowing that in 10 years or less, we're going to have more people over 65 than 18. So there
I
you have
love
it.
it.
The universal design always.
Oh
Yes,
no,
please.
I love it. And folks, those buttons that we push with the little man in a wheelchair every single day? We're not in a wheelchair, but we get to benefit by walking through that door with two hands full of groceries. That's universal design. Um, we've got a bunch of people that have really been proactive, which I love. But Sherry says, what's good for the stroller is okay for the wheelchair. We made our house universal 20 years ago, and we're now in our 80s. And Sherry, I'd like to invite you to come on one of these discussions one day. Send me an email. I love real life stories, and you're a shining example of that. That's fantastic. You'd be very inspirational to a
And
lot
Steve, let me
of
jump in for a second here because there's actually a story I think it's in that chapter or another one. My sister actually has a house where it's three or four really steep concrete steps up, and I have a video on my YouTube channel where you see her bumping this stroller all the way up, and you see the strain on her back, the coming in and out. I mean, if something is that hard, you're not going to do it very often, right? And so her ability to socialize and bring her son out to the park, it's limited by the cognitive load thinking I'm going to have to try to navigate like these double storm doors, all these stairs to come down just to get this kid in once. I mean, it's exhausting. So
Oh
absolutely,
yeah,
Sherry, 100% agree. Strollers, wheelchairs, anybody visiting,
refrigerators, appliance
refrigerators,
delivery.
delivery guys,
Yeah, yeah.
absolutely. Yes. Yep.
No. Okay, Bonnie, you get a gold star today because I think your questions are the best. It's she says, how wide should doors be? I think you had mentioned a measurement, but could you elaborate a little bit on that?
So, okay, so old school houses almost always are going to be 26, 27 inches, very, very tight. I mean, at that moment, you really almost have to take down the door frame. I would say some of the newer ones, at least, they're looking at about 30, maybe 30, I'd say between 28 and 30 inches wide. Okay. Now, that can clear the wheelchair, but very perfectly. And so sometimes what happens is that caregivers get really frustrated. And one of my favorite inexpensive ways to do this is to put in a swing clear hinge, which is an offset hinge. And basically it means that you get 2 extra inches, just a little more wiggle room to be able to get through those doors a little bit. But, if you're going to build from scratch, 36-inch doors all the time. Just make them bigger. There's really hardly any downside. Do you really need 4 extra inches of wall on either side? I mean, wouldn't you rather just make your life easier? It's so much better interior doors at 36 make everybody's life easier. If you could make exterior doors that are 48 or even French doors, think about how big that is, right? You can bring in a big giant dining room table without having to disassemble the darn thing outside the door.
Yeah, and then also just, I mean, really looking at your space and recognizing that you might not necessarily even need a door, like just a nice, beautiful open space. Uh, Doors are for privacy, you know.
Yes. And
Um,
that's a really good point because a lot of times between bedroom and bathroom, I'll tell people if you don't care about that, just take the door off because door management is actually a reason why people fall. People are trying to negotiate like I need to lean forward off the toilet to close the door, and that's when they fall off the toilet. Or they're trying to use their walker to approach the door, but now they have to back up in order to open it, and that's when they fall. So doors really are kind of a hazard, and Unless like it's absolutely necessary, then I usually just try to avoid them if I can, or just leave it open. Leave it open. It's like less for you to deal with.
Okay, we're getting lots of good questions here. We'll get back to the table of contents, but I love these questions y'all are bringing up. Dagmar says, "Why put a gas cooktop in a house for an older adult? I have an induction cooktop. If nothing is on it, it will not heat up, even if someone is playing with or turning on the heat." Share a little
Yes.
bit of, and maybe let's dive into the kitchen in terms of
Yeah.
aging in place, some of the things we can do.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's an excellent, excellent point. And luckily, you're not alone on that. So, induction heating, induction stoves are what everybody's moving towards for environmentally friendly reasons as well. So, gas always has, things, particles that are going to be in the air that are not healthy. You're introducing other things. In fact, I go to the Kitchen and Bath Show, the National Kitchen and Bath Show every year. And this past year, I'd say everybody has kind of moved towards induction because the technology is good enough that you can get solid heat and you can have exactly what you're saying. Like as soon as you take the pan off, it's completely cool. And for smaller spaces, you have that open spot. That now it's a serving buffet once you're done and you're ready for everybody else. In terms of cooking, I think that is another big reason why I get phone calls with panicked adult children saying, "Oh my gosh, like I don't think that mom and dad can live by themselves anymore. The stove was left on. There was a fire. I'm really worried about their safety. They're on a walker. They could never get out in time." And the average, and it's really shocking actually. It only takes 5 minutes before a house is really engulfed in enough flames. I mean, from doing home care for as many years as I have, I can tell you that a lot of people take way more time than 5 minutes to get up off the couch and to get to the front door to safety. So kitchen fire is a really big deal, and to a point where fire stations have programs where you can work together with them on fall prevention and fire prevention. But I digress. But I do want to point out that there are technologies to address this because it's such a big issue. So think about stoves that will shut off automatically if motion is not detected within a certain amount of time, or Ohm Kitchen is a smart knob where you can retrofit it, stick it right on there, and you can control that with an app on your phone. And what's even greater about that, see, I think about this as how busy I was as a young mom with two little kids, and you're late getting to whatever. You screech out of the driveway, and you think, shoot, is it on or not? Like I don't even know. And there have been many times that I have burned pans like that. It's very embarrassing. But in a tech like that, you could get onto the app and look, and then you could turn it off by your phone. You wouldn't even have to go home. You could check if it's on, you could turn it off. And in the same vein, if you were checking for an older adult, you could do it for them as well. And there's another neat technology where it's boil over technology. They can predict whether something is about to boil over and turn down the heat. So there are some really cool things out there. Everything has pros and cons, which is why, you sometimes do need a little guidance on what is it that you're trying to solve and which solution is going to work best for you.
I love it. And you sort of gave us a glimpse at what your chapter 9 is all about, which is technology in the home. Maybe speak a little bit about other types of technology that can help us.
Yeah. Technology, I think the word scares people. Like a lot of older adults will think like, "Oh yeah, listen, I grew up on newspapers and radio. This is not going to happen." And I think if I could change the name of technology, I'd probably change it to something else so it's more approachable because it really doesn't have to be like that. I mean, technology can be as easy as textile technology. So I have a podcast called Innovative Aging where I bring on founders to talk about different ideas. Okay, this is open source. I mean, anybody can listen to this on all the podcast platforms. It's just that clinicians get credit, continuing education credit for listening and taking a quiz, but it is open for anybody to hear. I had a client, I had a founder on yesterday where she has basically made it easier for you to get in and out of the bed. And that's just through friction technology. So textile technology. So it looks like a regular sheet, but the way that the sheet is designed makes it easier to roll left and right and to get in and out of the bed. And it is so useful that 80% of her sales are word of mouth through just the Parkinson's community. And that's how I heard about her in the first place. But what I was telling her yesterday was that these good ideas that are simple technology, they work for everybody. Like pregnant women have a difficult time rolling left and right. People with chronic back pain, a lot of times that they hurt, they can't get comfortable, they can't sleep. Those ones get better as well. So, kind of back to that same point that this, we're not even talking about aging. We're just talking about everybody living better using technologies like textile technology or even, the cooking stuff or being able to turn your lights on and off through either an Alexa system or there's a dummy proof one called Lotus Labs. And it's a ring where you can like literally you touch a button on the ring and it will turn your TV on, lights on, whatever you have it programmed to, just like a remote. It's literally the same technology as a remote. So it doesn't have to be overwhelming, crazy, home integration type stuff. It can be very accessible, very simple, and not crazy expensive either.
I love it. I love it. And Bonnie, again, Gold Star Bonnie is she uses Alexa for additional backup timers for cooking and just reminding of things. Okay. Antoinette says lighting is one of the areas I know impacts more folks than they realize. What's one way to make traveling from bedroom to bath lighting or visual cues safer?
Yeah, so that is one of my favorite fall prevention solutions that's pretty cheap. You can buy motion activated lights very easily on Amazon for probably under 10, $20. You plug them in as soon as you move, it'll turn it on. And now it's not just about night lights. So sometimes people will say, "Well, I don't have a plug on the way to the bathroom." Well, that's okay because they also make ones where you can plug it in and then the motion detector aspect of it is at a distance from where it is. So you can stick that, let's say, next to the bed and then it triggers in another location. So lighting that's an easy way, a very DIY way. Hard wiring is always going to be the least amount of maintenance because you're not dealing with batteries, and the least amount of fall risk because you're not dealing with cords. Everything comes with these pros and cons, right? You have basically three different ways to do it. One is more expensive, one is cheaper, one is fall prevention, one is, maintenance. You have to know yourself. If you hate changing batteries and everything and you won't do it, then don't do that solution. So ultimately optimal situation when you have funds is to bring in an electrician to put in additional can lighting above that's connected to a motion sensor that you can make it dimmer or higher for nighttime use so you're not waking other people up. You can, yeah, I would be thinking about how do I do this in a more permanent way that's dummy proof that I don't have to think about it. It happens automatically.
Love it. Okay. A couple of things. Patty was asking about pacemakers and induction stoves, and I got a little bit worried because my dad has a pacemaker and an induction stove. Oh, Patty, I did a quick search. Seems like most people are going to be okay, but I'm glad you brought that up. Um, Antoinette, it says, and we added a microwave with this feature when you were talking about the safety feature. For my sister as Parkinson's, she had burned up one and it still allows her to use this. I want to bring that question up because chapter 12 of your book is aging in place with Parkinson's disease. Tell us a little bit about, well, maybe if you can give some feedback to Antoinette, but tell us a little bit about your thoughts on Parkinson's and aging in place as well.
Yeah, the reason people ask me, why did you put our Parkinson's chapter in there? It's not just because I happen to be a Parkinson's specialist through family experience. It is because that is the fastest neurodegenerative disease that's doubling basically every year. And the reasons behind Parkinson's are not like 100% clear. Although Dr. Oken recently, who's the author of Parkinson's Plan, he's a co-author with it. But he and I were talking about this, and even just a discussion about water quality is something that is important. It's preventative. He's arguing that, listen, even though we think about Parkinson's as something that just happens to us, the way that cancer does or whatever, you have to recognize that lifestyle medicine things, easy things like water, the food that you eat that doesn't have pesticides in it, like all of these little things, they add up and they become preventative and neuroprotective of it. So I started my journey in this because my father-in-law has Parkinson's. And weirdly, just by coincidence, one of the girls that I went to school with 27 years ago happens to have a Parkinson's specific like outpatient clinics here in Florida. And so I took her there and she taught me all about like all of these things that are going on in the Parkinson's world that exercise is the only thing that slows the progression of Parkinson's. The only thing. Everything else, the Cinemets and everything, they're just symptom prevention. They're taking a Tylenol for that headache, but if you don't take the rock off of your head, you are still going to have a headache. It's going to get worse and worse and worse and worse. So you have to be able to think about how am I going to manage this disease differently? And the reason that was important to me to put it in the book is because it's not managed the same way that other diseases are. Parkinson's is one very unique to each individual. The expression is you've seen one Parkinson's, you've seen one Parkinson's. So not everybody has a tremor, not everyone has slowness of movement. There are lots of non-motor symptoms that are way more distressing, like constipation and apathy and just, not being able to sleep at night. These are big deals. And the treatment for it, the kind of exercise is specific. You need a specific kind of clinician who understands those types of movements that are required. So any therapy is going to be better than none, but you really want to be thinking there are specific things that you need to think about, and that's what I cover in that chapter of my book.
I love it. I love it. And if you have a Parkinson's diagnosis, the most important thing to do is move.
Yes.
So,
Yes. At a
moving before
high
the
level.
diagnosis, but they can prescribe the drugs to you to manage your brain activity, but moving and talking and and communicating and being a part of a community is really key. Okay, I love this one from Diane. What do you suggest for a two-story colonial house with a half bath on the first floor and no room to add a shower? Any words of wisdom for somebody like that who's probably in the mid-Atlantic or Northeast?
So again, this is where it comes to personalization. I would have a lot more follow-up questions to this. It's not a dummy-proof thing. I mean, if you're talking about having a backup plan for hospitalization, for example, one solution is to get these accessible no construction baths. We use them for spinal cord patients when we're trying to build like an entire addition that might take a few months and they need to be able to take that shower now. And the brand that I really like is called Shower Bay. And Shower Bay it's about $4,000, but essentially it comes like almost like Lego with a shower base and then the walls, and then you attach the water plumbing to the sink and it flows the water in here so you have an intake and an outtake, and then people literally can have a bath in their living room. And then if you need to disassemble it because you don't want it to be obvious every single time, it's easy to take apart and you just put it away, or you bring it with you if you're going somewhere, somebody's house maybe at Christmas where you know they won't have accessibility for you.
Yeah, and but let's see, I forgot the name of the person that asked that question, but this is kind of stemming into age in place or find a new space. And
Yes,
that's
I see.
chapter 11. In that, okay, you're in this colonial home and you're coming back, and it might just be a 3 month rehab where you got the portable shower, you're living in the dining room or the living room or, what have you. Obviously, putting a Steriglide, that's why somebody would get a Steriglide put in their home because
Depending
they
though,
don't,
depending.
yeah,
Because a stair glide, you still have to transfer onto the stair glide. Like you
yeah.
still have to bring like a wheelchair over, do a sit to stand, pivot, and sit on it safely, get all the way up, and still have a way to move around once you're upstairs. So it can be complicated. If you don't have a caregiver involved in this, some people might have one upstairs, one downstairs, but like, what are you going to do in this in between? So there's always a discussion around those things. And what I'll say about, whether or not you have to decide whether it's time to move or not, it comes down to how much home maintenance have you put into your home over the years? Like if you haven't kept things updated and you're going to need to put in, tens of thousands of dollars to even get it to a point where it could be livable, it may not be cost financially feasible. It might be cheaper, honestly, to look at the houses in your neighborhood and buy another house that would be cheaper to renovate. So there are lots of different thought processes on this about what it is. And then one really important thing I think is to think about is that not everybody has a choice about going to another space. There's a 2024 AARP study that talked about how only 16% of the American population could afford senior living at 100K a year. 16%. So that means that everybody else is aging in place, whether they like it or not. And they're going to need to figure that out, hopefully sooner than later. So cost savings happens when you start that way earlier and not try to do this, you know, on the fly. I have a fall. I'm suddenly coming home. I'm calling up the first guy that has availability, who's probably not the best guy to install, and his prices are probably hurricane prices because it's an immediate need. Do you see? It all adds up, and it ultimately comes down to if you want to save money. You start early, you build exercise habits so you don't need any of these other things later. So that two-story house with half bath downstairs, that's okay. Doesn't matter. You know, you don't need to take a shower down there. Your visitors don't need to take a shower down there, hopefully.
Mhm.
Any other reason would be you as the homeowner needing to do that upstairs.
I love it. All right. This is a good one. Somebody was asking the name of the sheets that help people get out of bed easier, and I had never heard of these. They're called slide sheets.
Oh no, they're called comfort linen.
Oh,
Comfort linen. Slide
comfort
sheets are
linen.
is a that's another I think it's a tube sheet. I think it's a slider sheet. They
Okay.
come in lots of different ones, and I would tell you guys, I don't think that her episode is going to come out until June of next year, but you know, listen to her. I mean, she's been a physical therapist for 40 years. She developed the very first hospital slider sheets to decrease injuries in nurses. And so, and they actually did EMG studies where they could show that the muscle usage of the nurses in turning patients and moving them around was less, and they did decrease that amount. And when she retired, she had so many people asking her, "Can I take these sheets home?" And of course, you know, they were developed for the hospital. They can't just give them to people to buy.
Yeah.
So when she
Who is
retired,
she?
she created. Her name is
Um,
Nancy McGovern.
Nancy McGovern. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
So she
Um,
developed a line and she thought about how, you know, people get better when they have good quality, luxurious fabrics, just in the same way that aesthetics matters. Neuroaesthetics is a whole field of design where you recognize that beauty and comfort and these all create feelings of safety. So she created, you know, a consumer version that is really, really, you know, soft fabrics and beautiful in color.
oh, that's cool. And actually, I
Hmm.
see that this is a really great idea that she has matching pajamas so that
Well, actually,
the
that's the point, right? So think
yeah,
about this. You know, a lot of people will say to me, well, I'll just use satin. And I say, well, that's fine, but satin's like grain is different and it actually doesn't move as well. She has this really neat video. I don't, it's probably online, but she has it for clinicians to show other people about how it doesn't slide nearly as well. So anything's better than nothing, right? So if you did just the sheet, fine, it's going to be better than a sheet. But if you
hmm,
do sheets with your pajama, now you're introducing two surfaces that don't touch. And the analogy I was talking about yesterday was kind of like alligator teeth, how you know, we think like when I feel a fabric, I'm thinking, okay, it's smooth, right? But I'm not looking at the micro. But the micro aspects of this are that when you need to move in your bed, your body has to go up and over. I don't know if is that where tossing and turning came from? I'm not sure. But the idea being that like two fabrics, when they sit together, they're sitting wedged in together, like alligator's teeth when they're closed. But when you have her sheets are designed to not have that valley. And so now you're just moving on the 2 points of it. And you can understand that if you have these two little tiny points that you're moving on, you decrease the friction. So her whole idea is just autonomous friction that they work as a sheet and pajamas system. But of course, I'm always going to say, if somebody says, well, why don't I just try my regular pajamas and the bottom sheet? I'm like, do it. Like one little baby step is better than nothing. Try it. And if you love it, then order the pajamas. And then when you see the difference, you might feel better about it. You can only learn by experiencing things yourself. It's so impossible to really understand something from a marketing message.
love it. All right. Karen, great question here. How do we find people that have the expertise and to advise us on appropriate home renovations? we've got people from all over the country. Sharon or Karen, feel free to reach out to me. I mean, I can try to help you find. But I'm Carol. I'm curious. What is your advice to folks?
Yeah, so I'll tell you, this is actually an area that technology startups are trying to solve. And the problem being that occupational therapists in school, in our normal school training, do not receive training on home modifications. The experience that I have is completely, self-taught through like home health experience, but also through my own, upskilling of other programs that are out there, right? So what is that Hamota has HMOTA.org, maybe, is it's a group of occupational therapists that are in the home modification space, interested in the home modification space. They do assessments. One, Jukebox Health is another one that has a nationwide platform through like all of these other OTs. What's another one? Rosarium is doing ones that are with Medicare Advantage. But, but there are also lots of, individually independent practitioners that have businesses like mine that I would just search in your zone for a home modification occupational therapist because those ones will be somebody that only does that, only knows that in your area versus, a franchise where you don't necessarily know what you're getting or how much training they have. There's no standardization with it. So I would
Yeah,
tell people, talk to them. Like talk to them and see how you feel about it. Therapy is not a it's not a hard science. I mean, we call it therapeutic use of self. You and I need to use my experience and and my approach as like a partnership with you. And if we have the right dynamic, it will be a great partnership. And if it's not right, it's okay. You just have to look for somebody else. It's like the way you connect with a specific doctor that you get more outcomes if you guys understand each other. So I would just
yeah.
have a conversation.
Yeah, so and folks, like if you're looking, if you're especially in your mid-Atlantic, I know some of the resources. You can shoot me a thing, but also certified aging in place specialists, occupational therapists, reach out and talk to folks. Where we find a lot of the problems is where people they've had a trusted handyman or remodeler who they call on, and this is the first time that he's ever put in grab bars, and it takes him a lot longer. He might not install them correctly as opposed to getting somebody that has done this dozens and dozens of
And
times.
don't forget though, like, and this is why reading my book is really important. It's not just about the physical space. Like putting it up on the wall is great, better than nothing. But where you put things determines the path of travel. So if like I went into a house one time where, they had a great handyman installed totally correctly, but the bar is at a downward angle. And I was like, I don't know what was there's probably a mindset behind it. Like he was thinking about something. It made sense in his head. But for me, it just seemed like a fall risk because now I'm training this patient to constantly do that. So the height matters, location matters, and that's where like an OT brain looks at that differently than an install brain, which is a bit more of a contractor handyman thing. And so I do virtual assessments for that reason because, people need guidance. I don't install, but I help people understand what it is that they need in their home and what are the ideas that they should be thinking about. And here are 10,000 links that you need to go do your research
Yeah,
and come back to
you
me if
know
you have more questions.
one of the universal design pioneers, Louis Tenenbaum, years ago, somebody asked, "How do you know where to put up grab bars?" And his response was, "I look for fingerprints."
Yep.
It's like, and because you can put a grab bar anywhere or everywhere, and a place where you're trying to get stability without something, that could be a great place for a grab bar. You can also put electrical plugs, faucets anywhere you want to, either. We're sort of in this mindset that all of this stuff has to be at a certain level. And actually, to that, an earlier comment that I read, I've got a good one here that I want to read. We got about 10 minutes. Um, uh, was complaining about microwaves always being way up high, above
Hmm.
above a cooktop range. Any thoughts on
Yeah,
placement of
absolutely.
sink?
I think that's one crazy because one, the statistics are that over 65, the number of rotator cuff injuries that are prevalent is much higher. And the first thing that happens with rotator cuff injury is you can't raise your arms above 90 degrees. What do you need to do to get to a microwave? Above 90 degrees. Two, it's almost always located over the stove. Hot stoves, burning risk, all of those things. Three, bringing things down from the microwave requires strength. Deceleration control over reaching and then slowly bringing down this hot bowl of soup. And you can imagine what a burn risk that is. So for all those reasons, I'm not a big fan of those. If you need a microwave and you can't do anything else, just buy an inexpensive one that you put on the counter. But otherwise, when I redesigned my kitchen, I put my microwave underneath the cabinets. And I did this, and my kids were toddlers at the time. I did it for their independence so that they could access it. They're not asking me to come and microwave whatever. I mean, I want to provide an environment that produces as much independence for them to learn and also to free up my time as a caregiver. And that's a huge part of what I talk about in my book as well, of don't steal their therapy. Do not steal these moments of where they can learn to put their shirt on and their pants on and it's exercise versus a caregiver's, using their limited energy with a huge amount of tasks to do and hurting their back potentially by overdoing things in the name of I'm trying to show that I love you.
I love it. Okay, I've got a question about tub cuts, but before, since we're in the
Yep.
kitchen and we're talking about
Yes.
microwaves, somebody wants you to talk about height of sinks. And while you're doing that, folks, I'm going to drop a discussion that we had on these really cool technology. They're cabinets and countertops that can
Hmm.
move up and down with the at the push of a button. But share some insights about sink heights.
Yeah. So sink height is really important. It's work height, right? So it's whatever that is comfortable for you. Generally, that's going to be 90 degrees of your angle at your elbow and down just a little bit. Now, those adjustable height counters that you were talking about, I love those, of course, for anybody that can, so you can work in a seated position because I have endurance issues, or I'm in a wheelchair, or I'm really short, or I'm a toddler, or, and then really high ones for people who might be really tall. I caution people to like not take a blanket statement for things like, for example, just because a toilet is higher doesn't necessarily make it quote unquote better. So somebody who is people think like, oh, okay, well, I just need it higher, right? That's what it seems to be talking about. So my knees don't hurt. Well, I had somebody put one in that was so high, her feet were barely touching the ground. And so, that in itself requires now more trunk strength for her to stay balanced on the toilet. And if you think about from a constipation point of view, knees below the hips, that makes it really hard to go to the bathroom. So in that same vein, thinking about counter heights, vanity heights, where I went to a recent new senior living that opened, and they had installed these like extra high countertops, right? Which with the thinking that, okay, older people don't want to lean over, they have back pain, therefore we're going to make it higher. Well, the client that I went to see had been in a wheelchair for 5 years. And so now she's having to use this space sideways because that's the only way that the chair would get in there. And now the counter is almost at her chin level because it's so high. So imagine how difficult is it for her to be able to brush her teeth, spit into the sink accurately, see herself in the mirror because you just raised it thinking a blanket statement of, well, older people do this or whatever, that this is what their need is. And it's not. You have to assess what that person needs and make appropriate recommendations. And that's why I like adjustability.
Yeah, I love it. Okay. Um, to pub cuts, and this is dealing with affordability, is it
Hmm.
looks like uh Joe Carroll is in an apartment building. They got an estimate to have
Tub cut?
the
Yeah.
shower taken out,
Oh, I
and it
see.
was really expensive, and then the plumbing and all that. And so now she's looking at tub cuts, but maybe some things that Joe Carroll might be thinking about in terms of affordability, living in an apartment building and making it accessible as well.
Right. So, tub cuts, of course, very cheap, about I'd say between $400 and $800, depending on the labor where you are. Okay. A lot of tubs, generally OTs, when we come out to do assessments, it is a tub transfer bench. So that means legs on the outside, two legs on the inside. And then what you would do is you back up to the bench, you scoot back just like you would in a chair, slide the legs over, and in you go. Okay, so you're constantly sitting. That's an always safe thing. Little inconvenient because sometimes the water will spray, will kind of come down on the floor. So you do need to do a little bit of water management with towels afterwards. But it's a cheap option. Those are maybe $60, $70, something that you can use all the time. Tub cuts, right? Like kind of in the middle in there. And then, full showers. Yeah, it can be expensive. Now, you can do like Best Bath has ones that are ones that they're ready to go. We use them for spinal cord patients to like just, you take down everything and then you put it in and it's already pre-blocked in the back. But, they're still not going to be cheap. So these are, again, back to the idea of, well, like you have to figure out what can you do slowly and over the decades so that you can use it, but then spread out that cost a little bit for yourself.
Yeah, I love that advice. Now, I think this is going to be our last question, folks, but
Okay.
I'm definitely going to have Carol back on. This has been great. The This is one of my favorite age in place questions from Marissa. How do old folks change ceiling light bulbs, especially when reaching out to others and it's not easy for an introvert to do? The, I love the challenge of safely screwing in the light bulb in the middle of your home because uh it's who do you call up to do that? I mean, handyman don't do that. A lot of times people order Domino's pizza and have the delivery guy do it. Um, but this is one of those practical things that if you risk doing it, you could end up being in the hospital. And then if you don't change it, it's an unsafe environment. Any thoughts on the old screwing the light bulb into the ceiling?
Yeah. So this comes back to my whole thing about what are you trying to solve? You're trying to decrease maintenance long term, okay? So that means that you are investing in higher quality bulbs, maybe LEDs or something that are good quality, will likely not burn out, will likely not have to be changed frequently or whatever. Now, I would say though, I mean, Ace Handyman here can easily do that kind of thing. Sorry, where they can come and screw in light bulbs and stuff. You pay the guy for the hour. There are lots of college kid groups out there that do have businesses that do nothing but rake the leaves and do basically anything that you want. You're paying them for their time. You tell them whatever they want, like whatever you need done. And I love those as a Christmas gift. Like, here's a gift card to these guys who order them around, give them a big list of things to do, and you know see what you
Somebody
need and
put
get
on
it all
their
done.
task. There's
Yeah,
Task Rabbit
TaskRabbit.
is
Mm-hmm.
another good one. So holy cow, Carol, this has been an amazing discussion. Like I said, I'm going to have you back on. Folks, I put Carol's contact information. Just go to evolvinghomes.com. You can contact her through that website. You can order a book on Amazon. I've got those links. If you didn't take notes on all the chat and stuff like that, don't worry. It's going to be at proaging.com later today. Um, but this has really been great. Any final things that you may have not been able to share that you'd like to share, Carol?
Just that I know I'm not supposed to have favorites, but my favorite chapter in my book is about, why there's denial and how to gently get around that. Because the psychological aspect of it is so important. I mean, a lot of people know what to do. We have lots of discussions about that, but it's the discussion about why people are resisting this
All
change and
right.
why I'm
Guess
just
what?
trying to help. Why aren't you doing that?
Okay, guess what, Carol? I'm going to email you. We're going to get you on the calendar. And instead of talking about, we can always go down the rabbit hole, but we're going to do a discussion on the title of that chapter is Why Resist and How to Gently Shift the Mindset.
Yeah,
And let's do a discussion just on that. And I'll get
sure.
that on the calendar, folks. It'll probably be like in March or April. But really delighted to have you back. And let's dive down that rabbit hole, which is just as important as age in place or find a new space. So,
Absolutely.
all
Absolutely.
right, folks, have a great day, great week, and we'll see you all in January online. Thanks a lot, Carol.
Thank you so much. Bye, everyone.